Hi everyone, Paul here with an update on the Majestic repair. Things have been pretty cold in the shed lately, so I haven't been doing much work, but I have a new space heater and looking forward to getting some work done through the winter. Here is the barrel ready for its first round of sanding and polishing. As you can see, I've removed the lever and the retaining ring from the pen, and I've also covered up the monogram with a piece of masking tape to protect it from the sanding. So that's ready to go, and I'll be working on that first. The tool of choice when you're polishing and sanding a fountain pen's barrel and cap is micro mesh, which is a set of ever finer sandpaper that's either attached to flexible foam like this, or perhaps solid blocks or other shapes. The coarsest is 1500 grit, which, as you can see, is fairly gritty. It's still a lot finer than your average home repair sandpaper, but it's still fairly coarse. All the way down to 12,000, which is so fine and so smooth that it almost feels like a cloth rather than any kind of sandpaper. That's what you use at the very end. Typically you start with the coarsest and work your way ever finer, and by the time you're done, the barrel will look shiny and smooth. When you're done with the sanding and polishing, there are still a couple steps left. One is to do a pass or two with a very, very fine polishing paste such as prelim metal burnisher, which is by appointment to Her Majesty the Queen, by her good grace. We have this wonderful material which is actually used a lot in museums for metal such as apparently armor and weapons. It provides a bit of a coating to help protect the material. It works great on the metal fittings of a pen, but it's also it's a nice polish for the plastic or celluloid of the barrel. And finally, you give it a nice coating of microcrystalline wax polish, also by appointment to the Queen, because there's nothing but the finest for our pens. And this gives it a really, really nice smooth finish that acts as a bit of an insulation. It makes the pen feel very smooth, and it gives everything a nice, even, shiny gloss to hide any lingering imperfections that you might have missed with the multiple passes of the micro mesh and the last bit of burnishing. So I'm going to do some sanding and polishing now and show you the results when I'm done. So just a quick demonstration of the basic principles behind the sanding and polishing process here. Basically, when you have your grit sandpaper of choice, basically what you want to do is just go along and do a steady strokes parallel to the length of the barrel. What you're trying to do is any cracks, or, well, not cracks hopefully, but gouges or scratches that might have been picked up over the years on the rather delicate plastic or celluloid material, you want to just buff them out. So the coarser sandpaper, of course, will take a small layer of the material off, and then ever finer grits will smooth that out. But basically, if everything's going in the same direction, then you end up masking any kinds of scratches that might be diagonal or irregular shape. This will just smooth everything out so that the light reflects all in the same direction. Now you can see that although the barrel is fairly shiny right now, the looks can be rather deceiving. This looks fairly polished, but if you really look closely, which I can't really get the resolution with this camera here, but if you look at it under a strong magnifying glass, you can see little scratches, little dents and dings that ever so slightly deflect the light and mar the finish. Now, it's to be expected in a pen that's probably 70, 75 years old, but when it's done, it's going to look like it came straight out of the factory. So it will also help make the patterns stand out and be more vibrant. The reflective pattern as you tilt the pen, the different shades will fluctuate. You can see a little bit of that here. It'll be even more pronounced. So that's the reason for sanding, and that's the basic process for sanding. I'm not going to try and do that with the camera in front of me. I like to have it up close to my face so that I can see the details. I wear a little magnifying lens over my eyes, glasses, so that I can see in detail. But that's the basic process of what I'll be doing. And maybe I'll shoot some interim footage along the way to show you what it looks like after a particular grit has passed. That might be more instructive. So let's see if I can do some of that. Okay, just to give you what's probably the clearest example of the difference caused by sanding, here is a look at the barrel after a pass with the 1500 grit sandpaper. And what you'll notice immediately is that there is no more shine, or what shine there is very diffuse. The barrel is now very smooth. It's got a nice texture to it, no shine, but the lingering pits and scars and dings have almost been completely buffed out at this point, and replaced with a smooth surface and parallel grooves that were caused by the grit on the sandpaper, which will then be sanded out and smoothed with the ever finer shades. I'm not going to take you through all of the shades, but I wanted to show you what's probably the most clear example of the difference post sanding compared to what you saw before. So I'll keep working on this until I get it to a nice buttery, shiny, smooth sheen. But this is what it looks like now, and not to worry, it's going to look a lot nicer when it's done. Well, here it is. Here is the barrel after my polishing, buffing, complete run with the micro mesh and the buffing compound and the final coating of wax. As you can probably see from the photo, it's pretty shiny. Unfortunately, the camera quite can't do justice to the fine level of detail, but it's so much shinier than what it was before. And what you end up with is a lot deeper texture of the pattern and the colors. As you can see, as I move it around, the reflective pattern of the lighter color stripes here fluctuates depending on the angle you're viewing. It's a wonderful property of the old celluloid material, and it really comes through very clearly, much more clearly now that it's polished. The shine is all the way around. If you look at it up close, there's still some small abrasions, but overall it's so much smoother than it was before. You can see here these light spots in the grooves for the cap. I still have a little bit of dried wax that I need to get out. I use a very, very fine spatula, very gently stroke the dried wax out of the grooves, but I still have a little bit more. The more the wax dries, the more visible it becomes. So I thought I got it all, but there's still a little bit there. But as you can see, there's a lot more gloss to it, and what you can't tell from here is just how smooth it feels. It feels like ice or glass. It's a lovely feeling. That in part is due to the wax coating, which gives it a nice even sheen. So the barrel is in great shape, and that's where we are at the moment. One last thing I wanted to show you was something that didn't really become apparent until I did the cleaning. But you'll notice toward the end of the barrel here, there is a faint vertical or horizontal, I guess, line. It looks like a crack, but as you can see from the texture of the pen, it doesn't actually break up the surface. It's not a dent or anything like that, but it did become visible once the polishing was nearly complete. My best guess is that it has something to do with the process of manufacturing the barrel. When they cut, heated, and bent the tubular material to make the end cap, the effect is rather difficult to see on the video, but it has the effect of like a sausage casing. The lines converge and come together to a point that is very, very carefully and smoothly polished. But you can see sort of the lines converging there. I don't know the manufacturing process, but my guess is that this material was heated carefully and bent and shaped, maybe with a hammer, over a form, and was then polished and allowed to cool and polished some more. But along the way, it developed that little tiny imperfection that looks like a little bit of a crack right there. You can see that. And as I say, it doesn't really break the surface. You can't feel it. So it doesn't actually affect the shape or the polishing in any way, but it didn't become apparent until the polishing was nearly finished. That's how subtle it was. There's a similar effect on the cap, I noticed, which is a little more noticeable because the cap seems to have a few more imperfections. I haven't polished the cap yet, and it's difficult to see from this video, but the contrast between the reflectivity and shine of the cap and the newly finished barrel is pretty amazing. But there's a little bit of a distortion on the barrel here that you can see. And this one actually does affect the surface of the pen. There's a little bit of a bump there, and you can see how it distorts the reflection ever so lightly. So again, I have a feeling that's due to the manufacturing process that bends the material perhaps over a hemispherical dome metal form, and it was hammered when it was soft and then polished. But a little bit more of a blemish on the cap than there was on the barrel. And I'm going to be interested to see when I polish the barrel, when I polish the cap, if that's going to smooth out any. You can also see another one there, which looks like it's in general line with the shaping process. So this cap went through something of a little rougher shaping process than the barrel, it looks like, and it'll be my goal to try and smooth that out when I'm polishing the cap. So when I do the cap, we'll take a look at the after image and see how it compares to this.